listening to the Bayview Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What's going on, Bayview? It's your host, Andrew, back again with host Chris.
Hey, everybody. So good to be back with you once again. Good to see you, Andrew.
Yeah, good times. Summer is coming sadly to a close, but it means fall. Fall means football and flannels and fun. I'm trying to think of all the F words that go with fall.
Football, flannels, and fun. Yes. All right. Well, we can. It does. This is true. Food.
That's a good one.
I know for my wife and I, game day, as if you go to Bayview, you are sick and tired of hearing, obviously, that we are huge Alabama fans. Roll Tide. Oh, yeah. But man, game day, like I get up and we start thinking already. All right, what time's the game? How are we going to map out our food and what are we having for the game? And I think next week we have a 7:30 kickoff, so we'll kind of have things ready. And I get excited about it.
So it's like a full-on big deal in your house then.
It's a big deal for my wife and I. Our kids tolerated it.
Sure.
I don't think any of them were ever like, yeah. I think it was more or less like, oh, mom and dad are watching football.
And are you guys, I mean, to each their own if you are, but are you like jerseys on, like pom-poms? Like, is it that kind of situation where it's just like, hey, we're going to eat good food. Two of us are going to sit and watch. Like, what's the...
Probably not quite pom-poms and jerseys for every game.
Yeah.
Every other year, typically, we're all together with my extended family for the Iron Bowl, which is the Saturday right after Thanksgiving. It's the Auburn, Alabama game. Mm-hmm. That is that way. That is jerseys, pom-poms.
Yeah.
It's just, that's a full-on
like face paint, like you're...
I don't know about face paint.
Someone's wearing a helmet, like you're in it.
No, but on game day, on just a normal Saturday, like next Saturday, I kind of have a tradition. Yeah, I'll wear an Alabama T-shirt of some sort, like all day. That's kind of my thing. And I'm just thinking about it. Like, game day, and I'll get up and watch, college game day in the morning, and kind of get all the scoop. And I just love it. It's pretty exciting.
That's sweet.
And it is. It's part of fall.
Yeah.
And although I'm always super sad to see summer go, there's something about fall, kind of get back to routine.
Yep.
I kind of enjoy that. Even around here, around Bayview with the staff, summertime is filled with so many coming and going. Like we're not all here all the time as much as we are maybe in the normal routine.
Yeah.
So kind of excited about that.
Yeah. It does feel like the gang's back together, and there's just some normal rhythms that come into play, and that's super enjoyable. I think my wife would say summer is her favorite, but I'm fall through and through. It is not hard for me to sweat and things like that, and so summertime is enjoyable, but I am much comfortable in when I have to wear layers. So that's just my vibe. But I'm excited for fall. I asked the football question just because I know, like, people who live maybe closer to college towns and stuff like that, like, game day is crazy, and it's every game. Even if they're playing the no-name Division II school, it's like, no, we're going all in, all out. So
certainly,
that's so good.
If I were still in Tuscaloosa, it probably would be amped up a couple notches, or we'll go down to the quad and all the tailgating and everything going on, and kind of experience that. So
that's sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Very cool. Well, hey, today, this episode specifically, we want to kind of kick off a discussion based around spiritual disciplines. Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit in the past about, like, health and physical health and spiritual health, and then I think what we want to do over these next couple sessions and just episodes in general is really talk about maybe more the nitty-gritty that comes with how to become more spiritual healthy. And I think with that comes physical health and mental health and all those things. And so we want to talk about these things, called spiritual disciplines, which is, there's a wide array of them. You can read and find online 3 or 4 spiritual disciplines. You can find, Richard Foster's wrote a book called Celebration of Discipline. He lists out 12 or 13 disciplines.
Right.
All these little things that really boil down to help with growth and to help, know Jesus more and to go deeper, to expand and really deepen that relationship with him. And so really that's kind of our hope, is to maybe pinpoint a couple and really spend some time of like, what does it look like and what does it mean? And again, we're not experts in the sense of what we do is 100% correct by any means, but just even talk through what does it look like in our life even, and to really, kind of process and flesh those out. And so when, I guess the first question I would have for you is, when you think of spiritual disciplines, like what do you think of? Like, what is that, especially that word discipline?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I think, when I hear the words together, spiritual discipline, I think immediately it's kind of along those lines of what we're trying to help, while we're trying to learn it, help everyone around us do, and that is become deeper, more mature followers of Jesus. And so that's really the goal behind of it is, and that's probably a question I get asked, you get asked often, is how do I grow? How do I get deeper? How do I know more of Jesus? We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that the idea of spiritual disciplines, that is the goal.
Yeah.
And so even as we walk through and talk a little bit here in a second about what they are not, or not to be confused, that's always has to be the goal. It has to be the goal that through this, I have this deeper connection with Jesus, his word, the Holy Spirit that's in me. That's the goal. That's all this is about. These are things, I think you used a word when we were talking a few moments ago, almost like spiritual rhythms.
Yeah.
Things that we do to help that. And so along those lines, I think we got to be careful of not getting lost in some of the some of the bunny trail versions or some of the side things that have happened. There's some really warped ways this has gone. Yeah. Some of it we know is like maybe branching, what other religions would do. This isn't about mysticism. This isn't about chanting and finding some next dimension, space. It's not that. It's not what I think other organizations that label themselves Christians have made it either. This isn't a situation of us experiencing a level of enlightenment that is, out there, or unlocking something. What was the book that came out years ago? Da Vinci Code, was that right? And everybody read the Da Vinci Code, and all of a sudden there's hidden numbers and everything in the Bible and all these. No, there's not. Yeah. Okay, we're just going to say that for you right now. There's not a hidden numerical code in the Bible. Why would God do that?
Yeah.
Why would God be like, all right, I'm going to give you my word. This is everything you need to know to walk my path. Yeah. But you're going to have to figure it out. Yeah. God is not the author of Where's Waldo kind of theology. But I do believe that there's always more to learn. Sure. I believe there's always more to experience. And I think through these disciplines, we continue to set ourselves up to be constant students of the word, constant investors into this relationship. So that's, when I hear that, that's what I think of discipline as a word. I think it applies across our lives. I mean, we both have disciplines, right? I mean, what discipline, like if you take the word spiritual out, what disciplines do you think you have, or what are things in your life?
Yeah, because I definitely think with the idea of spiritual disciplines, just first and foremost for that, I do think it's like, it really is a form of discipleship. Like, that really is like, if you were to disciple someone or be discipled by someone, like, I think these would be the things you'd be putting into practice and really help that process go. But in terms of disciplines itself, like, I think when I hear that word, I think it's like, if you are like have a training regimen or something that you're like a diet or a routine in the evening or in the morning, like it's almost something that's just like, again, we keep using that word rhythm, but like just a part of everyday life, that I think a discipline is probably a habit that has gone from like, oh, I have to something you just kind of do. And a lot of times a discipline, there is effort involved. Maybe it's a reminder's needed or focused on, but there's this idea of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to be intentional about it. And it's ultimately going to help reach a next level or a goal or continue in a process. Growth comes from it normally. So I think that word really boils down to maybe a more intentional habit.
Yeah. With an outcome that is intentional.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the focus.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned something a minute ago before we went on the air, to make sure, we got to make sure we communicate. This isn't about like legalism or checking the boxes, but it's things that I'm doing that I know are going to result in the good I desire. Yeah. And I'm seeing it through for my life. Like, this is super silly and ticky-tack as far as in comparison to spiritual disciplines. But for example, there's one discipline I have in my life that I hold pretty steady to, and that is knowing how big of a day Sundays are for us as pastors. Yeah. We're both teaching pastors. We speak multiple times on a Sunday, which means on a Sunday I'm preaching, I'm up early, I'm studying. I mean, it's just pour.
Yeah.
So I have a discipline that I very rarely will go out and do anything on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Like if people want to go out to dinner, hang out, I very rarely do that on a Saturday night, because I know for me a discipline is I want to be home in the evenings. I want to get to bed early so that I can wake up early Sunday morning and be at my fullest energy level, my fullest mentally, spiritually. I just want to be rested. I want to be ready to go. So that's a discipline that I've chosen to equip. Now, I'm not a legalist about it, meaning this. I'm not. Don't say, oh, yeah, well, I saw you out at such and such last Saturday. Okay, I'm not a legalist. I'll go out to dinner. It's just a discipline that I know for my good. It's something I enjoy putting into place.
It helps you be prepared.
There you go.
Yeah, prepared, ready.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us do those, whether it's physical, whether it's dietary, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, our heart with this is we want to share some things in the coming weeks. These are some things that, man, as we're all doing our best, these are some great things to put into your life.
Yeah.
And you'll be so pleased and fulfilled with the outcomes they produce.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in many ways, they're foundational.
Mm-hmm.
Can be really, really foundational to your life. And in many other ways, like we talk a lot about to know Christ and to have a relationship with Jesus and all that. Like these are things that really are foundational to that relationship, but help deepen that relationship. Help make it probably feel maybe for someone who's more, head, right, than they are heart. So when they think about Jesus and when they think about this idea of relationship, and there's a 3-step process, and maybe your brain works that way. Yeah. It's like, these things, like, they are going to help you, or that if when you take them serious, like they would help you in that way of like being able to really get to know him, to hear him, to whatever word you want to place in there, but to actually go deeper in the relationship. Similar, I mean, we were saying it's even similar to how we have relationships with our wives or with a friend. Like there's things you naturally do. You were saying off air, like you don't have to, or there's not this idea of like, oh man, I need to hear from my wife. Like there's that mentality of like, man, I get to go and like I want to catch up with her and hear how her day went and actually spend time with her. And so all those things. And so what these disciplines really are ways that now you get to go spend that intentional time with Jesus, and you get to. And
the discipline side of that particular one would be things that I intentionally do, meaning because I'm going to be intentional, I want to really make sure I'm hearing her.
Yeah.
The discipline is I'm going to put my phone down. The discipline is I'm going to turn the TV off or down. The discipline is I'm going to do things that position me in the best possible place to accomplish what I want to accomplish, and that is to connect deeply with my wife and hear and listen and absorb. And so that's what these are. They're just disciplines that we're putting into place in order to do that. Yeah. And so I think when I was young, I felt my parents trying to equip me in some of these things as a child. And certainly for a child, when mom and dad are making you do it, now it feels a little more forced.
Yep.
And it is, but that was also them just instilling in me the importance of these things.
Yeah.
The importance of why we do these things. The importance of reading my Bible. That was a regular ongoing question in our home. Hey, did you read your Bible today? Did you read your Bible today? We started every morning with family devotions, all the way through high school. You did not miss that.
Wow.
It didn't matter at 7:15. I think I just remember you're at the table. Mom makes breakfast. Dad does a devotion. We pray. Now get out your day. Those were really cool disciplines. I look back on like, oh, all right, now I get it.
Yeah.
I push back a bit, and we kind of all rolled our eyes like, but now I understand.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have a memory of one of my best friends growing up. Even if I was stay the night at their house and wake up in the morning, it was like his mom was gonna do. She had a Bible and she was gonna read and do like this mini devotional. Whether again I was the friend and I would still sit there in the living room with them and kind of go through that process. And so just like, yeah, that just I haven't thought about that in a long time. But just like that coolness of, I don't think as a kid I realized. I think I did the eye roll and I did the why, like why are we doing this? But looking back, it's like that was a spiritual discipline she was trying to instill into her family, into her kids specifically. But I was almost like a recipient of it too, just to be around it. So,
yep.
Well, what kind of things then? Maybe first, let's just lay out maybe a handful of what are we talking about when we say spiritual discipline? So more specific to like, I think we've kind of already mentioned, maybe it's Bible reading. So it's like the studying of the word. When we say spiritual disciplines, we're going to talk about is like our prayer life. What does it look like to pray? Rest. So silence, solitude, meditation, like actually more than that though, finding rest. What are some other disciplines?
I think in doing some of the reading I've done and then kind of cross-referencing it with Scripture, particularly the New Testament, Book of Acts and on, I think of things like obviously worship, I think is a spiritual discipline. And many of these, I think, will fall into two categories. You might have the corporate version, but there's also a level of personal version as well. And I think maybe we're wanting to give you more, we're wanting to give our listeners more equipping into the personal side. I think we all know how to do the corporate. We all know how to go to church, and we all know how to sing when everybody stands and sings. Still important. Talking more about the personal side of it, but there's a personal worship aspect of it. I think through that, I think the churchy word would be fellowship. Yeah. You know, is that a spiritual discipline? Well, it is if we begin to evaluate the type of people that we allow to have the deepest impact and influence on our lives. And we spoke about that a couple episodes ago briefly. I think that's a spiritual discipline at some level.
I would 100% agree. Fellowship, community, that kind of word, the idea of needing people. We'll probably touch on the idea of fasting and what is that? You know, what is that? What does that actually look like? And yeah, so I guess kind of laying some of those out, then what aren't, like, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. I want to say what aren't spiritual, like what things are not spiritual disciplines. And so when we've kind of mentioned it when we first started, but you know, we're not talking about, you know, the chanting and some of that kind of stuff. Like what, I guess for you, like what things are, we wanted to be careful to be like, hey, this is not what we're talking about.
Right. I think we could easily slip into things where it is, like I think a word that we'll refer to that can go either way is the word meditation. Yeah. I remember my first job as a youth pastor. I'd only been there about a year. Things were going well, and I had this crazy idea that I'm going to redeem this word meditation. And so I had this cool idea on a Wednesday night with the students, and we did this thing that I felt like was very appropriate, but it was a form of biblical meditation. Yeah. But man, I had a couple moms freak out, and they started losing it just off the word meditation. And then they, like one mom was going around telling her kids, "Open your eyes, don't get sucked into this." I'm like, we're not doing hypnosis. Yeah, we're not doing Ouija boards. Yeah. We're not asking the spirits to speak to us. And maybe that's where her fear was. And I think we hear words like meditation, maybe prophecy. We hear some of that. Yeah. I think there's some ways it has been manipulated and changed. You know, we're not worried about necessarily through this portion of things. We're not going to get into spiritual gifts, speaking of tongues, prayer language. That's a different topic for a different time. But I do think there are a lot of those things that have this position where it puts us in a spot where rather than just helping me learn, grow closer to God and experience that closeness, it's helping me become something and helping me become more this or more enlightened. That's not what this is about. And I think there's some of those things. I think some other churches, I know that there's a movement from a pretty large organization that is pretty clear that they do a thing called grave soaking, where they believe that they can go and lay on the grave of a past believer, and by laying there, they will soak up their spiritual gifts.
Interesting.
And so they're going around laying on these graves, and not just random people. Like, let's go to C.S. Lewis's grave and lay on his so we can absorb his gifts. And there's nothing biblical about that. There's nothing God-honoring about that. And there's all kinds of creepiness about that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just is not even close. Like, where are we going with that?
Yeah.
There's been different times where, okay, gold is going to fall from the ceilings. And, okay, where in the Bible does that happen?
Yeah.
Where are we seeing this scripturally?
Yeah.
So I think that that's what we're talking about. Let's not get into that. Let's not get sucked into that world.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not trying to go down a path of any of that. I also look at it from, I think this is a beneficial conversation, because I think sometimes when we use the word discipline too, like, well, first, like you can be disciplined, like actually be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the same breath, it feels like some of these can feel like forced habits or bad habits or something. Again, it's like, oh man, I have to do this, or I didn't do that today, so I messed up. Like, you can really fall, I think, really quickly into like maybe lacking grace and forgiveness of self,
right.
And we've talked about this even with like our health and physical side of things, but like there's a belief that this is all a process, and like these processes like are something that can be really, really beneficial when they're taken with the right seriousness.
Correct.
And viewed from a standpoint of like, man, I am doing this because I know it will better me, but it will better me not because it'll, accomplish A, B, or C. It really, what it's doing is it's drawing me closer to God, who's already right there, right? He's already present. He's already in our life. Like, but this is, hopefully, and just to use the R word again of relationship, like it really is a deepening and a growing side of it. And that's our hope. So I hope that when you hear these conversations, it's not viewed as, man, I don't do that, so I failed.
Right.
Or, I don't, that sounds really difficult. Man, how would I actually implement that to my life? Like, some of those questions might come up, and it's not a cast it aside and be like, that's not me. I'll do the one really, really well. But it's like, I think that's why this is a good conversation, because we're not saying you have to be perfect at all of these. We're just saying these are things that are worth maybe taking a look into and maybe hopefully instilling. But obviously there's a level of, we're not looking for perfect.
Yep.
We can't be perfect.
No.
And so
no, and I think anybody listening probably falls into the camp of somewhere in this place of either I really feel deep down like I want to know more, I want to grow more. Like, we have this longing, this yearning, I guess. Or maybe even on the lightest side of it, like, man, I know that I should be doing more to know more, to grow. And so I think every believer is in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And we don't want you to do it just because you'll feel less guilty.
Yeah.
That's not the goal. Don't do that. Don't do it for some payout. I've talked about this before. In an effort to help me understand how important reading the Bible was, my parents would pay us like $1 for every book of the Bible we finished.
Yeah.
And so, we weren't going to start like with Genesis or Leviticus. Yep. Man, we're going right to Philemon, and we're going right to 1st and 2nd John, and Titus, like the shortest books in the Bible.
Yep.
We're not paying you for it. There's not that type of reward.
Yeah. There's
just a huge blessing on the other side of it. There's this blessing of feeling this connection. It's this beautiful moment. Because I think of the words, I saw somebody post this meme of this, that not everyone who stands before him will get to enter the kingdom of God. They'll say, look at all the things I did for you. Look at all the tasks, and we cast out demons in your name. We healed in your name. Look at everything we've done. So that's not what God's looking for.
Yeah.
And he'll say, depart from me. I never knew you. And I think that as long as we understand that's the heartbeat behind it, is God just wants to know you. He wants you to know him. That's what this is about. How do I get to know him? How do I continue to build into this relationship and pour into it? And the disciplines are the intentional things I do.
Yeah.
You've got young kids at home. That's a little bit in my rearview mirror. But I know that even then I remember people telling me, hey, be intentional. Don't stop dating your wife as you're raising kids.
Sure. Yeah.
Make it happen. Make it happen.
Yep.
Well, we did our best. It wasn't every week. But we did our best, and we weren't beating ourselves up if we couldn't do it. We just knew that it's important enough to do our best to do the best. It wasn't legalistic. There was never a moment where I got out on the date with my wife and we had a babysitter. I'm like, well, I guess we're doing this because we have to.
Yeah.
No, it was like, I'm so excited we had this time together. I'm so glad we put the discipline in place to experience this.
Yeah.
So that's what I hope that we all gain from this discussion and these conversations.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so true. It really is like, it's just worth it. And even you bring up like the little kids and just some of that kind of stuff. I do think of people with families, and the best part about a lot of what we're going to talk about is stuff you can do as a family. You can do as a couple. You can do it with your kids. Like these are things that are very much individual, but they are very much at the same time. Like it's like you were just saying about morning devotionals or things like that, where it's like these are things you can start doing now or start whenever, but you can do it as a group.
Right.
And there's a lot of growth and a lot of health that can come from that. I try to, I do my devos at the kitchen table every morning. And so Liam, my 3-year-old, comes out and he grabs his yogurt or whatever he's having for breakfast, and he sits at the other side of the table, and like I'm sitting there reading and he's sitting there eating, and it's just kind of like he'll ask questions every now and then or make comments, but it's just kind of like that's like a natural like a rhythm in our household that he's seeing as we're going. And he's 3, so do I fully believe he understands what I'm doing or why I'm doing it? No, but my hope is that as it's a discipline in my life, it'll be something he sees on a regular basis, and we can start having those conversations about this is why and this is what it is, and to begin to bring him along in that process. It's an exciting thing.
And there's going to come that day where it's like, oh, that's what it was. Because as you're telling that story, I'm thinking, I remember as long back as I can remember that every morning when I woke up, if I got up super, super early, which I've always been an early riser, my dad would already be in the living room in his chair reading his Bible. And that image is burned into my mind. Certainly as a 5-6-year-old, I didn't know what he was doing. I just knew that's where to find Dad. But, I get into my teens and early 20s, and all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, wow, that's what was going on.
Yeah.
He was showing me what that looks like. Yeah, it was just those kinds of things. So all that to be said is I would say this. We're going to be kicking things off next episode. Between now and then, maybe just take a little bit of some time to personally evaluate, what spiritual disciplines do you already currently have, if any, what have you been feeling, that longing, that yearning, and what do you maybe hope to get out of these conversations and this dialogue that we're going to have?
Yeah, that's great. I really hope, just for myself personally, like I hope to know and learn more as well, because I think that's a big key part of this, with this relationship with Jesus and this moving forward, is that there'd be desire to not plateau and be like, oh, I know enough, or I've done enough. Like I think that mentality like that angles it so much towards this being a work or a forced thing.
Yeah.
And it's like that relationship with Jesus is such a sweet thing that should be growing and just ever changing, because there is growth happening and there is things that are been focused in on. And so I know for me, like, just to answer your question, even if it's for our listeners, like I'm just really hoping just to learn and grow in this time. And even as we started laying out some of the things we're going to talk about, I was like, man, that's a spot where like, I'm excited to dive into, because I don't have that discipline.
Right.
And so I think that I know I'm excited for it. I think it's gonna be really good.
Well, I'm right there with you. I'm looking forward to learning as I realize I do every time we do an episode. I learned from you. I learned from our conversation. I learned from our guests. And certainly through this, I think there's an incredible growth opportunity for all of us right here in front
100%.
of us. And so we are looking forward to taking this little bit of a journey with you, having these conversations about spiritual disciplines. So we want to invite you to make sure and tune back in with us next week. We'll be dropping the first episode, and we'll be talking about rest and how is that a spiritual discipline. So, we can't wait to be with you. Thanks for being with Andrew and Chris here on the Bayview Podcast. We'll see you next time around.